South Carolina, their best offensive series so far. A couple of passes from Connor Mitch. Darrell Adams caught one, and one to Brandon Wiles. And they're in North Carolina territory inside the 20-yard line, about just outside the 20-yard line. We'll hear from Corn in just a few moments on this football game. North Carolina with the opening score of the football game late in the first quarter, 7-0 Tar Heels, as South Carolina now officially in the red zone in this football game. As it seems that Connor Mitch trying to gain some confidence with a combination of short to intermediate throws to the backs and to the tight end, and some good, strong running by David Williams. And I think Phil Kornblut has rejoined us in Charlotte, as we see now the running game and short passing seem to be working for Carolina.
Yeah, and the Wildcat, a lot of Wildcat on this drive for South Carolina. The Gamecocks are down to the 13. Taylor Cooper and Brandon Wiles. And Wiles just had a nice run out of the Wildcat. So their offense finally looks halfway respectable on this particular drive after giving up the touchdown. That touchdown by North Carolina, I'll tell you, defense having a hard time stopping what North Carolina wants to do. And then they hurt themselves on a 3rd and 8. They had an illegal substitution call on the defense on a play that would have been an incomplete pass. Because of the call, it was a dead ball call, so the play didn't happen. So it gave North Carolina 3rd and 3. And on the next play, Williams throws a touchdown pass to Bug Howard to put North Carolina up on the board. They're up 7-0. And we got 21 seconds to go in the first quarter, and South Carolina trying to see if they can get in the end zone and tie this thing up. So I would say the offense now on this particular drive has looked much better, but the defense on 2 possessions for North Carolina, I mean, they haven't stopped it. They get the interception to kill one drive, but North Carolina has just gone right down the field on them the 2 times they've had the ball.
And, of course, on the touchdown play, you could see a guy playing a little bit of a different position, Jordan Diggs, taking the bad angle. And actually, it seemed he knocked the corner off the tackle at the 3-yard line, and that allowed Howard to score easily.
Yeah, good observation. On the first play of that drive, they brought everybody up to inside the box. They had no safeties back there. North Carolina just they read that perfectly and threw a pass over the middle. They got them off their 9-yard line and down to the middle of the field. And then, boom, 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 they get right back up to the line and snap the ball, and they're down the field. So North Carolina has looked very, very good with their offense, except for the pick. Williams is 5 of 7, 104 yards, a touchdown, and interception. They're doing most of their damage through the air. Bug Howard has 2 catches for 61 yards. Connor Mitch is now 2 of 7 for 36, and Wiles is leading the ground game with 20 as the quarter comes to an end.
Well, tell me this, Corn. Inside the stadium, can you feel the Spurriers having to either calm Connor Mitch down or just get him to relax and get into a flow? Because he really came out just firing. It looks like he all over the place misfiring.
Yeah, and that's to be expected, I think. I mean, his first start in his native state. What was good on this drive, they came out and started out in the Wildcat on 2 plays. And maybe that gave Mitch a little bit of a chance to kind of settle in. And then they called a couple of short passes. One was dropped by David Williams, and he completed a couple of others. So he looks a little more in sync on this drive, but they've got to capitalize here. I think the worst thing that could happen for them is to fall 2 touchdowns down, and the offense has got to respond and get a touchdown. Can't settle for field goals because the defense has not shown yet that they can stop North Carolina's offense.
Yeah, you're right about it. And of course, really, if you're South Carolina, you hope that as this game goes on, you can tell that those 2 big backs are getting stronger, and you can give them a dose of Wiles and Williams. But at that point in time, the game has to remain close for you to really be effective in the running game.
You're exactly right. And on this drive, it looked like South Carolina's offensive line has moved the pile. It looks like they're starting to win the battle up front on this drive. There were some good holes in both. They've been very effective in the Wildcat. I think if Spurrier can do it, if he can keep this thing close, where he doesn't have to shelve the game plan and go to the air a lot, I think you're going to see a ton of Wildcat with Pharaoh Cooper and either of the other running backs.
Okay, great. Corn, you'll be checking in with us, I guess, before the top of the hour, and we'll see what's happened as far as the second quarter is concerned. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay, and Phil Kornblut there in the stadium as South Carolina, as we tell you before, college football, there's no preseason, so the jitters have to all come out now, and it seems that slowly but surely Connor Mitch kind of shaking off the jitters after taking a couple of hits and getting in the ball game. And really, he has to be exhaling, Graham, because that throw he threw earlier, it should have been a pick six. It could easily be 14-0 North Carolina at this point.
Yeah, there's no question they've definitely outplayed them thus far and have had many more opportunities. Luckily, it is game one, and there's jitters abound on both sides. But as I believe, the USC did score. Is that correct?
3rd and 5 play, and they went into the Wildcat, Graham, and seemed to be discombobulated, didn't like the formation that North Carolina showed defensively. So Steve Spurrier called a timeout and then put Connor Mitch in the game and just threw a short hitch pattern.
Well, there you go.
Touchdown.
So, I mean, I think it's fair to say that here in the past, definitely the last drive, he seems to be coming a little bit more into his own. So, I mean, the jitters are going to fly. Your first start, things have looked ugly, but he's starting to come into his own a little bit. And everybody on both sides are going to settle down a little bit more headed into the second half. That's definitely what I expect.
Now, the interesting thing right now is John Hoke's defense. It'd be interesting to see what happens because North Carolina, as we said, they're going to move the football. But at some point, you have to show that you can get a 3-and-out on this team. If you get a 3-and-out, then you can start to run some clock. And then that is sort of the best defense against a fast-paced offense because they get off their rhythm.
Well, that's the first adjustment that's got to be made is to the tempo because they're killing them with the tempo right now. You've already seen the illegal substitution penalty because somebody couldn't get off the field. That's the first adjustment they got to make is make sure they have the right personnel in there for the next 3 plays. If you're going to, I mean, you got to make sure you're not substituting. And obviously they're going to pick up some other things in the headsets with the boards as far as the X's and O's go. But the first thing, adjust to the tempo. Get your guys in there. They can play 3 straight plays so they can stay in line, not have any issues with that with substitution and move forward.
And the interesting thing is I'm not so certain. I'm keeping one eye on some other things, but also keep an eye on the football game. I'm not certain. I have not seen the defensive line. I know you don't want to get too exotic in the first football game, but I don't think I've seen them run a stunt yet. It's almost straight thrust into the offensive line.
I haven't either. Nope.
And it'd be interesting to see if they start running some stunts because sometimes you can get penetration up the middle running a stunt. So it'd be interesting to see what they do as far as that's concerned. But Pharaoh Cooper, another North Carolinian from Havelock, North Carolina, making his presence felt, a preseason all-SEC performer and really in some people's minds should be an All-American in Pharaoh Cooper. He's been working overtime, I guess you could say. I think he was returning a kick, or he hadn't returned a punt yet, but he's been in that Wildcat formation until Connor Mitch's nerves kind of shake it up, and now he's caught a touchdown pass. So they have to get the football to him, and they showed during that drive that they could get it to him after those and that running game can set up the play action. I think that is the big key for South Carolina if they continue the running game. As we said before, if Steve Spurrier has anything to do, if his defense can show they can slow down North Carolina, he's got to be stubborn with the running game because you may butt your heads for 2 or 3 yards and then bust a big one, and you got to be able to be stubborn with that running game to keep the clock running, to keep that vaunted North Carolina offense off the field. Back in a moment on Sports Talk right here on the South Carolina Radio Network. Stay tuned. North Carolina's offense showing still some potency, and South Carolina is showing the propensity again of missed tackles. So North Carolina already inside the South Carolina 35-yard line on this particular offensive thrust is Quinshaw Davis, I think, had a pass play for about 25 yards or so. Make that Bug Howard. By the way, sort of an injury for North Carolina is one of their starting linemen went out of the football game. The right guard, I believe it was, Caleb Peterson, who's getting taped up on the sideline. So he was out for a couple of plays for North Carolina. Interestingly enough, while South Carolina and North Carolina playing in Bank of America Stadium tonight, the Carolina Panthers are in action tonight, but on the road, as they're a full slate of NFL meaningless things, but we'll go over them for you tonight because this is the last of the preseason games as they get ready to play it for real next Thursday night. Baltimore is in Atlanta. The Ravens to take on the Falcons tonight. The Bengals are in Indianapolis to take on the Colts. New Orleans at Green Bay. If it was a regular season game, that would be a great one. Tampa Bay and Miami for the Battle of Florida there in that football game. Elsewhere, Philadelphia at the Jets, Jacksonville at Washington, Buffalo at Detroit, the Giants at New England tonight. Interesting, we'll mention New England in just a moment. Carolina Panthers at Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. Minnesota is at the Tennessee Titans. Cleveland at Chicago, and the Battle of Texas, Houston at Dallas. It's Kansas City at St. Louis, Arizona at Denver, Oakland at Seattle, San Diego at San Francisco. So a full slate of football games, meaningless preseason games in the NFL tonight. We're talking about NFL scores. Well, the biggest score was for one guy, and that was Tom Brady, as he wins his battle in court with the NFL in his appealing his 4-game suspension. And he won. U.S. District Judge Richard M. Berman cited several significant legal deficiencies in the NFL's handling of the controversial decision, including no advance notice of potential penalties, the refusal to produce a key witness, and the apparent first-ever discipline of a player based on a finding of general awareness of someone else's wrongdoing. Because, of course, they pointed out 2 guys, the deflator, I think one of the guys that worked in the locker room, as the one with the needle.
The deflator?
Yeah, the deflator, letting air out of the football. So Tom Brady will be in action for the first regular season game. Now, the NFL says they will appeal the decision. Obviously, Roger Goodell said, I wanted the cell phone that Brady had so I could see if he had any records, text messages to these guys who were supposedly in the locker room helping deflate the footballs. Brady said he usually kind of normally changes his cell phones periodically and judiciously got rid of that one.
I don't know what happened.
And so he didn't get the cell phone, so he didn't get the records. Obviously, the NFL, this is a big decision for them because it shows that their system of punishment will not stand legal muster. And they've fought and lost a lot of court battles with this. Be interesting to see what they do with this court battle with arguably probably the most viewed player in the NFL right now. He of the, I guess you could say, a beautiful model bride, the soap opera good looks, and a few Super Bowl rings as far as that's concerned. Here's my question, Graham. Now that he's got the 4-game suspension lifted, what about the other penalties? I mean,
I think they have to fall as well, don't they?
I'm not certain.
Draft picks and
a $1 million fine. Obviously, draft picks have stood the test of time. I mean, if the Falcons can blow, artificial noise in the stadium and lose a draft pick, well, the NFL does that sort of things. But see, these are interesting picks because they've been stripped of their first-round draft pick next year. I mean, a number 1 pick. And the 4th-round selection in 2017. Those are premium picks you don't want to give up. So my thinking is New England will probably, Bob Kraft will look over and said, Mr. Goodell, would you like to go back into court and argue about these draft choices? I'll tell you what I do. I'll trade you. We'll take back the draft choices, and we'll let you here's let me reach in my petty cash pocket. Here's the $1 million fine. So it'll be interesting to see if they work something out, because I don't think both parties want to see a courtroom for a good while until the NFL appeals this Tom Brady decision. Back in a moment. Stay tuned. And back for this Thursday night edition, the first edition during football season 2015, right here on the South Carolina Radio Network. I'm Tom Hayes, Phil Kornblut, and Kevin McCrary up in Charlotte for the Battle of the Carolinas, as North Carolina has taken a 10-7 lead, Corn, but South Carolina able to bow their neck at least and hold the Tar Heels to a field goal.
Yeah, I think for them it's kind of an emotional victory, and it took a 47-yard field goal by Nick Weiler. That's a career long for him. His previous long was 23 yards, so he doubled up that on that field goal, and cleared it with plenty of room to spare. But you got to believe emotionally, the Gamecock defense got a little bit of, shall we say, backbone on that drive, and a little bit of pressure on Marquise Williams, forced him into some couple of bad throws. And anyway, he did a nice job of stopping the drive and limiting North Carolina to the field goal. And now the Gamecock offense has the football. And tell you what, Connor Mitch has completed a couple of nice passes on this drive already, and the Gamecocks are down the field and into North Carolina territory. Pharaoh Cooper a little while ago with a nice catch and run. So looks like Mitch is kind of settling in and getting in a little bit of a rhythm here, and you can see his confidence starting to pick up a little bit.
Now the bug. I was about to ask you this: the bugaboo of missed tackles again. We see rearing its ugly head in this football game.
Well, it did on a play on that drive by North Carolina, a pass play by the sideline. I think it was Bug Howard, and he broke, I think, 2 tackles before they finally got him out of bounds. But on the same drive, a couple of plays later, I think it was a running play, and Sky Moore got underneath the blocker and did a picture-perfect form tackle on the running back and drove him into the ground. That really kind of picked up the defense, I think, and gave them a little bit of an emotional lift there, and then they were able to force them into a fourth down situation. I think it was a 4th and 5, and they ended up going for the field goal.
Now, I know this question is going to come up, and I know you've got your binoculars with you. The defensive line, have they run any stunts, and how have they looked? Are they getting any penetration at all on North Carolina?
Well, in this offense in North Carolina, it's hard to get pressure on the quarterback because the passes, he gets rid of it so quickly, quick swing passes, quick dump off passes. So it's really hard to judge pass rush against North Carolina. I would not expect them to have many sacks in this game unless North Carolina gets into a situation where he has to drop back and throw some deep balls. So far, they haven't had to do that.
Okay, thanks, Corn, and we'll be checking with you in the second hour to see how things are going for South Carolina. And South Carolina and North Carolina in Charlotte, 10-7. North Carolina with about 10 and a half minutes left before the half. Back in a moment right here on Sports Talk. You stay tuned.
Live from Columbia, this is Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network. Be a part of tonight's show. Call us at 800-956-7266 or email talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, here are your hosts for Sports Talk, Phil Kornbluth, Kevin McCrary, and Tom Hayes.
As we start this second hour, I guess you could say, as we began the first hour, 1 out of 3 ain't bad. Phil Kornbluth and Kevin McCrary playing hooky there at the Battle of the Carolinas in Charlotte. South Carolina in the red zone. This has been a Connor Mitch drive, and I mean on the ground, as really he's played that, I guess you could say, that read option, and apparently the read option has told him to run, and that's what he's been doing. South Carolina the behind 10-7 to North Carolina. We can bring you some stats as South Carolina tries to march it into the end zone. Marquise Williams for North Carolina, 7 of 10 for 133 yards, a touchdown, and that one big interception by Sky Moore in the end zone. As far as rushing is concerned for North Carolina, Elijah Hood, 4 carries for 25 yards, leading the Tar Heels. Connor Mitch started off shaky, and he was 5-11 now for 76 yards. Pharaoh Cooper has 1 completion for 6 yards, yes, out of the Wildcat. As far as rushing yards is concerned, Connor Mitch now leads in rushing, 5 rushes for 37 yards. Brandon Wiles, 8 carries for 27 yards. David Williams, who's shown pretty well tonight, 4 for 19, his longest run of 9 yards. And the new punter, Sean Kelly, on the fake punt that yielded the first down for South Carolina early in the football game, he's got 1 rush for 17 yards. So all what South Carolina has tried to do, if you check off the list, throw to Jarrell Adams, 1 catch. Connor Mitch, can we get him comfortable to the backs? Check. Get the football to Pharaoh Cooper? Check. But the defense, still some incompletes. And I don't mean incomplete passes. I mean incomplete as far as them making tackles are concerned. The sure tackling is not there yet. So it'll be interesting to see. South Carolina, a big down coming up, 3rd and 5 on the North Carolina 7-yard line. The big key here, as they call the timeout, is obviously South Carolina would like the lead, but you don't gamble down here early in the football game. You got 3 points maybe in your pocket, and I always say maybe because you never know about a bad snap or whatever. But you got 3 points maybe in your pocket, and one thing you don't want to do is do what North Carolina did early in the football game, is that turn it over in the end zone. And that'll be a key as far as that's concerned. Connor Mitch, if you're going to be concerned about anything outside of him shaking off the jitters, is he has been favoring his thumb on his passing hand. He's kind of tried to shake it off, but on one of his runs, I think he was bumped going out of bounds and maybe jammed his thumb and trying to get that straightened out. So it'll be interesting to see what the trainers do between now and this half as they return for the play on 3rd down and 5. Back in a moment right here on Sports Talk. Stay tuned. And we return, and we've got a tie ball game in Charlotte. South Carolina, Elliott Fry kicked a short field goal of about 22 yards or so. And South Carolina has tied the football game against North Carolina's 10-10. Pharaoh Cooper had a chance maybe on one of those fade routes in the corner of the end zone. Connor Mitch kind of threw it high. Pharaoh came up with one hand to try to catch it. And a real scare for South Carolina as Cooper landed all kind of awkwardly on the leg, which has a kind of bum knee, and he kind of limped off, but he seems to be doing okay on the sidelines. We check in with Phil Kornblut, who's at the football game. Sort of a scare for South Carolina fans with Pharaoh Cooper jamming that leg into the end zone corner.
Yeah, that was in the corner away from us as they tried to throw the fade to him there on that drive, and he came down awkwardly, but I think he's going to be okay. See him on the bench in front of the fan, cooling himself off. Very good drive for South Carolina on that possession pro, except they did not get the touchdown. They had to settle for a 25-yard field goal by Fry. But again, Connor Mitch, look, I hate to say it, only time this year I'll say it, he looked like Connor Shaw, throwing and running and reading the defense and running the zone read. He kept the ball a couple of times and made nice gains out of it. And threw the ball well. I don't think the pass to Cooper there at the end was where Spurrier wanted. We had the first throwing of the play right after that play. But Mitch did account for 58 yards on that drive, running and passing. So he seems to be really settling in. I would say right now, and of course momentum is your next play, if the Gamecock defense can come up with a stop on this drive and force a punt and get the ball back in the hands of the offense, I think the Gamecocks can be feeling pretty good.
Now, they're reporting right now is just cramping for Pharaoh Cooper. Now, one of those runs that Connor Mitch had, he looked, Corn, like he banged his thumb on a North Carolina player going out of bounds, just brushed it barely. Did you see him on the sideline shaking off maybe his thumb at a point, talking about Connor Mitch?
Well, he didn't come out. He stayed on the field. They did get Terry Orth up, and he was warming up briefly during the timeout. But Mitch never came out. He stayed on the field and continued to run the team and did not show any evidence of any problems with the thumb or the hand the rest of the way. Unless, we'll have to ask him after the game if the hand was bothering him on that throw to the corner of the end zone. He didn't seem like he got enough air on that pass and didn't give Cooper a real good chance to get up and jump up and go get it, as you like to do on those corner fades, at least from where I was sitting. Maybe it looked different on television. But anyway, I think, as I said, if South Carolina can get a stop on this possession and we're inside of 5 minutes to go in the half, then they'll have a chance to go down and do something for the end of the half. And you got to like their position if they can get a stop.
Well, tell me this: the demeanor of John Hoke on the sideline. Have you able to see through your binoculars what he's looking like there, frantically trying to get the defense set against this fast tempo?
Yeah, that's a good question. I really haven't watched him. I'll try and pick him up maybe in the second half. I've been watching. You really can't. When North Carolina's got the football, you can't take your glasses off the playing field because they're back up at the line of seconds of a play ending. And, they're trying to go as fast as they can. But I'll tell you what, South Carolina has had the ball 10 minutes longer than North Carolina, 16:33 to 6:16. The Gamecocks have run 8 more plays. So the game plan from that standpoint for Spurrier is working the way that he would design it in the pregame, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. And of course, South Carolina is still, that run up the middle is really still costing him. It'd be interesting to see if they make any adjustments at halftime.
Well, that's what John Hoke is supposed to do, and make adjustments and see if they can improve in the second half, and we'll see if they make those adjustments.
Okay, Carl, thank you. We'll be joining with you a little bit later on to talk about this football game. As he said, really, that game plan, the key is, and that's why it was almost very important, that they get a touchdown there, because their game plan of really just running clock has worked to keep North Carolina's offense off the field, because we see what kind of rhythm they can get in against this defense as far as moving the football is concerned. Another team moving the football early just started a few moments ago, 6 minutes in the first quarter. Charleston Southern has taken a 6-0 lead over North Greenville. So Charleston Southern playing good football the last couple of years. Coach Chadwell, and he's got them playing well again. So tonight, so we'll see how that score comes up. We got some other college football games just starting up. As far as that's going to think, Central Florida now has a early 14-3 lead over Florida International. Central Florida, another tough opponent on South Carolina's schedule coming up later on during this football season. In fact, noticed a note from ESPN, at least from one of their callers, and looking at one of their polls, saying South Carolina may have the second, I should say, toughest schedule in college football. So that would be interesting. And Graham, you've been kind of keeping an eye on the football game while I've been running my pie hole. So South Carolina's defense kind of bowled up just a minute ago.
Yeah, on a 3rd and 5 from inside the 10, another 3rd and 5. The Gamecocks, just got their first sack of the season. I believe it was maybe Kelsey Griffin, one of the tackles, just sent Marquise Williams back 15 yards, give or take. So now you got a little bit more difficult field goal try coming up here.
Now, Kelsey Griffin, of course, going into tackles, and really one of those guys who really blossomed and precipitated the move of Ehrlich Jones to offensive tackle, which they think he's going to be there because he's buried on the depth chart. So Ulrich Jones moves further into the depth chart. Now, South Carolina, that you got to say, yeah, they got 3, but that's a win because they were really running the football. And Kelsey Griffin, a big sack for South Carolina, setting up that field goal for the Tar Heels. 13-10, North Carolina with about 5 minutes to go before halftime. So this is really brewing into an interesting boxing match, we could say, Graham, is these two teams kind of feeling each other out. But you can tell South Carolina has the game plan where they want it. They just can't get the lead right now. As Corn alluded to, they've had the football about 10 more minutes than have the Tar Heels.
And that's the secondary game within the game is the fact, what plus 10, I believe you said, was on time of possession, not including this drive here, but that's, you're wearing out their defense much more than they're wearing out yours. So they should be a little bit fresher, considering the fourth quarter when that finally does come around. So yeah, they're definitely, the last 2 field goal attempts have definitely been wins for USC for sure. Especially when you add in the time of possession and how much they're wearing down North Carolina's defense for later on in the game. Definite wins.
Now here's and I guess when you look at it, you would look at it to see later on in the football game is Debo Samuel, who has really, he got deep on one play and really defensive back. You got to say the ball was slightly underthrown. Seems like a little bit stronger guy, maybe as a junior or senior, he'll be able to make that catch and just ward off the upper body of the defensive back. But he's shown a propensity that he can get behind the secondary. And we've seen just a few moments ago the propensity maybe as a kick returner to cough up the football in a dangerous place right there for South Carolina, because that could add 7 points to North Carolina's total. But South Carolina was able to come down with the possession. As we said before, we're looking at following a football game in state tonight as Charleston Southern leading early in that football game over North Greenville 6-0. As far as college football is concerned, just one score in so far, and that is Central Florida leading against, let's see here, that's Florida International 14-3. Florida International football team down there in Miami. And we'll be back with more on Sports Talk in just a moment as we wind down heading toward the first half. And we're back as the halftime winding down. And South Carolina trying to see if they can get the tying field goal or maybe even the leading touchdown if they can hit one deep late. As Connor Mitch runs on a 3rd and 6, gets the first down for South Carolina. But as we see more and more often that many young players, because it's nighttime, they say, hey, it's cooling off. I really don't need to drink any more Gatorade or fluids right now. And sure enough, Connor Shaw, I knew I was going to do it. Connor Mitch runs for a first down and then grabs his leg because I think he's cracked up. And so they've had to bring him to the sideline and get some liquids in him. And that means that Perry Orth will make a debut inside of 40 seconds for the first half. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. Looking at the updated stats, Marquise Williams still having a pretty good day for himself. 10 of 13 for 160 yards and a 1 touchdown and the 1 interception in the end zone. Connor Mitch trying to get his sea legs is now 5 of 13 for 76 yards. He's rushed 6 times for 46 yards. And Graham, the thing that surprised me, and everybody said he was a decent athlete, but he does have a burst when he runs the football. It's not like he doesn't know about running the football. He looks like he can run the football.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's any question he's more athletic than Dylan Thompson was, and he's a little bit more assertive as far as making the decision and going and depending on his legs and deciding that that's the right call. So he's definitely more athletic, no question. But got a little burst. He's not quite Connor Shaw. He's somewhere in between. But, yeah, definitely get the job done on the read option if they decide to implement it.
And, of course, just a few moments ago, we had Perry Orth hit his first pass, I think, to Pharaoh Cooper. So Perry Orth showing that maybe he can reach into the playbook. And any experience you can get him now, maybe to the good, because you never know when a quarterback can go down. So even here, getting some valuable experience at the with Mitch with the cramp on the sideline. Be interesting to see how they play this. But South Carolina now with 14 seconds to go might just be on the borderline of Fry's field goal leg. So we'll see if they can tie it up before halftime. As far as rushing is concerned, Brandon Wiles has rushed 8 times for 27 yards. I don't think that's updated yet. I think he's got 9 carries for about 35 yards at this point. And David Williams, 5 for 21. Any knock against David Williams right now, Connor Mitch is 5 for 13, probably should be 7 of 13. David Williams, again, one of those young player bugaboos of dropping swing passes because you're looking up the field, deciding whether to run or not before you actually, secure the football. So David Williams trying to assert himself in this football game. We'll see if he does better as far as a pass receiver in the second half. As South Carolina will see if they can tie it up before the end of the half, and we'll be back to tell you what they did right after this. And as I said, a lot of football action going on tonight in the second quarter early. Charleston Southern 13-0 over North Greenville at that game at Charleston Southern tonight. So the Buccaneers showing their mettle early during this first half of that football game that kicked off at 7 o'clock. In Charlotte, they're at halftime. Phil Kornblut is there. And, Korn, I got to say, I thought they throw a short pass on that 3rd and 1, not a quarterback thrust into the line to try to get some more yards for Elliott Fry, and it showed that they kind of cost them because that field goal was just short.
That's what they call us. You call the Hollers. It's just a little bit late.
Korn, are you with us? I think Korn is down right now. We'll get back to Korn in just a moment. But as I said before, you could tell that Elliott Fry, he's very, probably 160 pounds soaking wet, and that's with uniform and pads and helmet on. And he was just short on that field goal try, which I think cost South Carolina. You got to look further in this football game. That may come back to haunt. Little plays like that. The thrust for the first down, I understand you get the first down, the clock stops momentarily. But when you try to clock the ball, when you should have thrown maybe a short out route with 10 seconds to go instead of thrusting into the line, that cost some precious yards for Elliott Fry as far as distance is concerned. As Korn has rejoined us from Charlotte. And, Korn, I was just lamenting the fact that maybe a short pass, 6-7 yards, get a few yards, get Elliott Fry better position for that last field goal before the half.
Well, yeah, absolutely. 57 yards is outside of his route. They ran the quarterback sneak to get the first down. They were out of timeouts, so they run the sneak to get the first down, and then they clock it on first down to stop the clock and get the field goal team out there. Maybe on that play after you get the first down, I think there were 6 seconds left. You could run a quick out, maybe pick up 3 or 4 yards, maybe. You also run the risk of a sack or getting tackled inbounds and getting no shot at all. So I think they went the conservative route just to make sure they got a guy out there to get a field goal attempt. Or maybe you just take a shot for the end zone and hope for the best. There's all kinds of things you could have done. That being said, I think that South Carolina's offense certainly came alive in the second quarter and stood up and sort of made a name for itself. In the second quarter, they didn't tear up the scoreboard. Only 10 points in the half, but they controlled the football. They did a lot of good things. I think Perry Orth came on when Connor Mitch had to go out with cramps and threw 2 nice balls to get him down the field before Mitch came back in. But I thought Mitch really settled in and looked comfortable and in control of the offense, and I could see, it seemed like everybody just sort of picked it up and rallied around him. I think their offense is going to be fine. I think they'll score some points in the second half. Their concern has got to be defense now. Even though North Carolina had 13 fewer plays in the Gamecocks and it had the ball 7 fewer minutes or 6.5, they've outgained them 243 to 216. North Carolina's getting the chunk plays. They're getting a lot of big plays. They're moving the ball quickly. Williams is 10 of 13 with a touchdown. He does have the 1 interception. But, they've got to be concerned about what North Carolina's getting per play against them. They're getting right under 9 yards of play. So John Hope's got to figure out something in that locker room at halftime to cut out those chunk plays. And I don't think, to my knowledge, and just going through my brain here, they kicked 2 field goals. They had interception. I don't think North Carolina punted in the first half. So defensive adjustments in the second half will be extremely critical here. I think offensively South Carolina will be fine. I think they've showed that they can move the ball a variety of ways, whether it's in the Wildcat or the regular offense, whether it's running or passing. I think they'll be fine. But can they come up with the strategy in the second half to force some stops and get the ball back to their offense?
It's interesting when you watch these teams like North Carolina, they can push it between the 20s. It seems that South Carolina, once that field narrows and you got 22 behemoths standing there, it's hard to get that spread working. And it seems that South Carolina, including the sack by Kelsey Griffin, they seem to be playing a little bit better, a little bit stouter as the field shrinks. You don't want to get down inside the red zone, but it seems defensively South Carolina has really held them to field goals at that point. And maybe that's the strategy, but South Carolina would rather do that if they had the lead.
Well, yeah, you're exactly right. And we're going to see early because North Carolina's going to get the ball to start the second half. And this is where, the back and forth, South Carolina needed to answer North Carolina before the end of the half. The score that the field goal the Tar Heels had, they needed to answer that. They couldn't answer it. So now North Carolina basically is going to get the ball again with a chance to put another score to go back-to-back score-wise. So I think the pressure is on the defense to come out and play at a higher level than they did in the second half, in the first half. Though I will say that they got better as the half went on, and they did come up with some key plays to force those field goals, as you mentioned. But they've got to keep North Carolina off the scoreboard and give their offense a chance to put them on top.
Now, obviously, we know that Pharaoh Cooper is a talent, Corn, and we thought we'd see a lot of different coverages against him. South Carolina, though, has been able to get the football to him. Have you been able to see what they're doing to get him open?
Well, Pharaoh's a really good route runner, number one, and so on the pass reception that he had, the nice one, he just ran a really nice inside route, and Mitch put the ball on the numbers. I don't think that North Carolina's been doing a lot of double teaming of him, trying to take him out that way that I could tell. The time I saw him line up and they threw the pass into the end zone where he was hurt, he had single coverage over there. So I guess you're just going to play him straight up. And South Carolina will move him around. They'll put him in Wildcat. They'll put him in motion. So getting him the football is not going to be much of a problem, it looks like, at this point. So I think that that's something that Spurrier will certainly try to attack in the second half and get his best player as many touches as possible.
Okay, Corn, thanks. We'll let you grab some grub halftime. I hope they give you a good spread there at halftime. We'll check in with you a little bit later on. So Corn's going to try to get in line and get some grub. I heard they serve tremendous cuisine in those NFL press boxes. Maybe he can bring us back a doggy bag, Graham, maybe, or something like that. And then we'll bring in Graham Pope for his assessment in the first half, because it seems South Carolina, after they shook off the kind of jitters you would expect from a green quarterback, that they played their game plan. It's just that they have not been able to get over the hump to get the lead.
Yeah, who's the better team at this point? Flip a coin. I don't really know. But yeah, Connor Mitch kind of seemed to come into his own in that second quarter. I want to say I just saw Corn's tweet. I want to say 4 for 5 for 70 yards or something. But definitely outside of the numbers, you could tell he was kind of getting into a groove, putting the ball more on the mark. And then sure enough, as you're getting into some kind of a groove, he goes down with the cramps and the Perry Orth comes in. I'm not so sure I wouldn't have Perry Orth just finish that drive as opposed to Connor Mitch coming back in for nothing more than a sneak, which is puzzling to me as opposed to just throwing an out route and getting out of bounds. I don't know what that was. But Spurrier has funny ways. But at the same time, USC's D has forced 2 field goal attempts after, 2 drives where they just mowed right down the field. Luckily, the first one ended in for the Gamecocks, the first one ended in an interception. So, I mean, they've seen everything's kind of settled down. But, here come the adjustments. Mm-hmm. And now that everybody's settled down, you get all that preseason stuff we were talking about out of the way. Now you have real football. This is what the second half is about, week 1, especially with younger teams like a USC and guys that have a lot of turnover with both these teams. Now we get one real half of football and we'll determine it just as I thought it would.
And the interesting thing is, as I said before, it's glamorous to be running between the 20s, but North Carolina is not the only team that can go up and down the field. The interesting thing is they seem to strike better when they're outside the 40 than they do when you narrow the field and let them get inside the 20. It seems that all that team is in that small space.
They want space.
Spread teams, they have a hard time adjusting to that. It would be interesting to see if South Carolina is able to get some 3 and out starting in the second half against North Carolina. Back in a moment. Stay tuned. You know, I just happened to see the replay of that touchdown pass to Pug Howard, and that ball was tipped. And I think another ball that probably Sky Moore got his hand on, but couldn't really deflect it enough that it didn't get to the receiver. So South Carolina, boy, maybe that's a big catch there off the tip ball for North Carolina. The halftime stats for North Carolina, first of all, Marquise Williams, 10 of 13 for 160 yards. The touchdown we just talked about, the tip ball that was caught by Pug Howard for a touchdown, and of course the interception that Marquise Williams threw after North Carolina's first journey towards the Gamecocks end zone was interrupted by Sky Moore picking it off in the end zone. As far as rushing is concerned, Elijah Hood has 3 carries for 20 yards. Logan 6 for 29 yards. His longest run is of 20 yards. Morris 2 runs for 20 yards, and Williams 5 for 14. For South Carolina, Connor Mitch 5 of 14. You can count maybe 3 drops in the football game, but he's got 76 yards and a touchdown to Pharaoh Cooper. Perry Orth came in as Connor Mitch experienced some leg cramps very late in the first half, about, I think, 40 seconds left. And Orth was able to hit 2 passes for 24 yards that got the Gamecocks into North Carolina territory. And Pharaoh Cooper threw 1 pass. Unfortunately, it was only for a -6 yards. And that one, as far as rushing is concerned, Connor Mitch is the leading rusher, 7 attempts for 47 yards, as North Carolina would rather him carry the football on that zone read in one of those big backs. And Brandon Wiles, his longest run of 8 yards, 8 carries for 21 yards. David Williams, 5 rushes for 21 yards. As a fact, we told you earlier, Sean Kelly, 1 carry for 17 yards. That was on the fake punt. As far as other action is concerned, we're following one other college football game in state tonight down at Charleston Southern. Charleston Southern now making their presence felt as far as maybe their superiority is concerned against North Greenville. It's 7.5 minutes to go before halftime, and that one Charleston Southern leading 20-0 as Jamie Chadwell sort of spoiling the Buccaneer fans. He's come in. This is his 3rd year. I think first year was 10-3, second year 8-4, and we'll see how they play here in the 3rd year, and very close. In both years, he, I think, was 3-2 in the Big South Conference, looking maybe to contend for a Big South Conference title this year. So I'll be interesting to see if they can get that done. As far as Major League Baseball, if anybody's paying attention, and who is, Braves fans are not. Washington leading the Braves 5-1, a team that really has hit the skids, not Atlanta, but Washington, with all the talent they have, and they find themselves 6.5 games behind the Metropolitans, the New York Mets, that is, in the National League East. Much action in the NFL tonight. The Carolina Panthers are in action. That game just starting. No score. Pittsburgh has the football in that one. May want to check on some college football scores to see how that is going as far as it's concerned. We told you early on it was Florida International behind Central Florida by the score of, 17-3 now in that football game. In other NFL action, the Falcons taking a 7-3 lead over the Baltimore Ravens in one of those games where you don't play the starters. You just make sure they don't get hurt, maybe one series, and that's it. And then you let them go as far as that's concerned. By the way, a correction on that score, Central Florida leading 14-3 over Florida International. In other football action going on right now, Wake Forest leading Elon 10-0 in the second quarter. Most of these games are in the second quarter. Ball State 9, VMI 0. Stony Brook leading Toledo 7-3. Oklahoma State and Central Michigan in one of those rare matchups where the team from one of the Big Five conferences goes on the road to a MAC school. So Oklahoma State playing Central Michigan 3-3 in that football game. In other action in the first quarter is Georgia Tech 13, Alcorn State nothing. Connecticut 6 and Villanova nothing. That game also in the first quarter. A little bit later on tonight, kicking off at 8 o'clock, will be Vanderbilt against Western Kentucky. That game being played in Nashville, Tennessee. A game I'm very interested in tonight, a couple of games, starting off a little bit later tonight at 9 o'clock. It's number 2, TCU, going on the road to the Big Ten against Minnesota, and Michigan of the Big Ten on the road to a Pac-12 school in rejuvenated Utah. That kickoff is at 8:30 as Jim Harbaugh makes his debut as head coach at his alma mater, the Michigan Wolverines. Back in a moment. Stay tuned. And maybe a big play in the football game. North Carolina going on 4th down. Interesting call right here at in the second half, I should say.
Well, hang on a second. They're going to replay this thing, I think. Hang on a second. Yeah, they're reviewing it.
Okay.
And we talked at halftime about the Gamecocks even getting a stop, and there's Spurrier's comment to television going in the locker room is we got to force them to punt sometime in the game. And North Carolina came out, and 4th down, they tried the quarterback sneak. Needed about I guess maybe a half yard or so, and South Carolina stung them right there on the line of scrimmage. And the initial ruling by the official is South Carolina ball. They stopped it, but now they're going to review it. So we'll see what they see. If it's we'll find out very quickly if it's an ACC or SEC crew in the replay booth.
Well, the interesting thing about it, Corn, is the fact that I'm not so certain they can see the ball from any of the replays, so they can't overturn the call on the field because there's no indisputable evidence to return the call because you can't see the football once they get in that scrum.
That's an excellent point. Right now, the ball is set down. The nose of the ball is shy up 35-yard line from where I'm sitting, looking at it through my binocs. The ball is not touching the 35, and I think he had to gain the 35 for the first down. So we'll see. We'll see what they decide here.
Well,
anyway, I'll say this. I saw very early on the first play, they ran a little swing pass, and South Carolina played it well. They got over with two guys. One went flying by, taking out a blocker. The second one cleaned up the play. So I could see coming right out of the locker room that Hoke had made some adjustments and maybe lit a little bit of a fire under these guys too.
Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, you know, they do it in college, but mostly you see a lot of those adjustments made in the NFL all the time. So Hoke is no stranger to that. In your mind, looking at this football game, Corn, what adjustments, if you're Steve Spurrier, you do in the second half?
You mean offensively?
Yes.
Yeah, hang on. Okay. All right, it's going to be South Carolina ball. You know what? I do exactly what I did in the second quarter. I mix it up with the Wildcat and Mitch and the run and the read option and all that. I don't change a thing. I don't change a thing except maybe complete another critical pass here or there, but I do exactly what I did in the second quarter.
Okay, well, Corn, thank you for all of your help tonight. And, of course, you'll be bringing back all the sound tomorrow night, and we'll be rehashing everything for everybody right here on Sports Talk and taking your phone calls at 1-800-956-7266 as we start the football season in earnest tonight. So now you've got your fix. We're back tomorrow night to begin the Labor Day holiday weekend. So long, everybody.